Hello and welcome into another episode of Lockdown Wolves. Today on the show, digging into some lineup data. Let's talk about the Jaden McDaniels problem through the first 7 games. I just want to talk about how impressive the bench has been. We'll dig in a bit on Anthony Edwards. We'll call it the change in his playing style so far this season. It's all upcoming. Welcome in. You are Lockdown Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Lockdown Wolves podcast, part of the Lockdown Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Lockdown Wolves. Today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKDOWNNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy hump day. And we're not quite yet to a Wolves game day. They got another 2 straight off days and 3 games in 4 days, Thursday, Friday, Sunday. So tomorrow we'll preview the Bulls game. Today I want to dig into some lineup stuff. We'll talk about Jaden McDaniels. I want to talk about how great the bench has been, some stuff on the big pairing between Rudy and Randle, and then we'll get into Ant's numbers so far this year and his proclivity to shoot 3-point shots. We'll talk about, again, we're 7 games in, but we're starting to get a bit of a sample here, and clearly his shot selection has changed this year. So those are all things we'll cover today. A big thank you for making Lockdown Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Lockdown Wolves. You can also watch on the Lockdown Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And a reminder about the new newsletter as well. The Lockdown Wolves daily newsletter is one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free right now at lockdowndaily.com. That's lockdowndaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Lockdown Wolves newsletter. All right. Let's dig into some lineup stuff, and I want to start with Jaden McDaniels. I don't think it's any secret. Like, if you hadn't pulled up Basketball Reference or Cleaning the Glass or, any of these sites at all, say it, you're 3 weeks in, you haven't looked at any of those stats. Maybe you haven't. The eye test would have told you Jaden McDaniels is not playing well so far this season. I don't think there's any 2 ways about that. So I don't think you need the advanced data to tell you that. However, not just the advanced data, the data period, the numbers, right? However, when you dig into some of the lineup data, the negative impact he's had so far is stark. Now, I should also say advanced metrics have always been a little bit more down on Jaden McDaniels than the overall consensus, because in general, a lot of the numbers that are used, certainly win shares and some of the other more advanced metrics that folks will cite don't fully capture the on-ball defense piece of things. And I've talked about, B-ball index quite a bit in the past, does a great job of showing, was it 2 years ago, Jaden was the number 1 player in the entire NBA in ball screen navigation. He was very good again last year, but the last couple of years, there's a lot of these very specific things that he's very good at: ball screen navigation, defending passing lanes, overall on-ball pressure, miles traveled on the court, all that stuff is really positive for Jaden McDaniels. But he's been a negative offensively his entire career. He had the nice shooting year a couple years ago where he was at basically 40%. That came down last year. And he doesn't contribute a whole lot else. And there's certainly been flashes, and obviously he had some great scoring moments even in the playoffs last year. But so far this season, Jaden McDaniels has not had a positive impact. He was in foul trouble in game 1 and played just 16 minutes. He's only scored in double figures twice, and twice in 7 games. He's only made multiple threes in 1 game. And so far this season, he's shooting, what's his 3-point percentage? Well, it's not, there we go, 23%. That obviously will not play. Now, the lineup data, I think, tells an even, darker story, if you will. When Jaden McDaniels is on the court, the Timberwolves have a 13th percentile operation. Their overall point differential in 378 possessions, according to Clean the Glass, is minus 11.1. Now, of course, the lineup he's played the most with is the starting lineup. And, even a week ago, call it 5 games in or 4 games in, there was, but Conley had not played well. And so the McDaniels Conley duo was really poor, but Conley actually would lift that duo. Now Conley's put together some better performances, and the Wolves overall have played better. And McDaniels has had a couple of stinkers, since then. So the McDaniels numbers are really kind of what drag everything down. The starting lineup right now is a minus 7.7 in 181 possessions. If you look at the just straight on-off data, and Basketball Reference will work for this. Like if you go to Basketball Reference and you look at the per 100 possession on-off data, this is crazy. Jaden McDaniels is a minus 30.7 in 7 games. Again, it's 7 games, but we're nearly a tenth of the way through the season. Like you get through, Thursday against Chicago, we'll call it a tenth of the way, 10% of the way, which is still only 10%. But like we're starting to get it's not wrong to say over the first 10% of the schedule, Jaden McDaniels has been really bad. A minus 30.7 on off. Nickeil Alexander-Walker on the flip side is a plus 43.3. We'll talk more about Nickeil and Donte DiVincenzo specifically, and Naz Reid for that matter, here in a little bit. But the Jaden thing is a problem. The minus, again, it's just so crazy because we're on the flip side, we're only talking 7 games and it's already this stark, a minus 30.7. Now, there's a lot of noise in there too, and we'll acknowledge that. Like Anthony Edwards, a minus 10.8 if you look at on-off numbers because the bench unit has been so great. But Jaden has been the one that's dragged everything down to this point. If you're going to single out one player, let's actually talk about. Well, let's talk about Rudy and Randle. Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle first, and then we'll get into the bench. We'll get into Na and DiVincenzo and to a lesser extent today, Naz Reid. But let's talk about the Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle thing. So I already kind of mentioned the starting lineup. Like if you just straight look at the starting lineup right now, it is a 27th percentile unit, a minus 7.7. Okay. However, if you look at Rudy and Randle together, because like if I don't give you this next piece I'm going to give you, it would be like understandable to look at this and be like, okay, so that means Naz is playing great and the Rudy Randle thing isn't working. They're not working together very well since most of their minutes are going to be together as starters. You'd be correct in that the next 4 lineups that they use the most all involve Naz Reid, and Naz has been fantastic, and we'll touch on that. However, it doesn't mean Rudy and Randle have not played well together. If you put Rudy and Randle on the court together and take Jaden McDaniels off, that's only 42 possessions, which is a small sample, but it's a plus 16.5. A 92nd percentile 5-man unit is any 5-man unit that has Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert on the floor without Jaden McDaniels, which is really damning when it comes to McDaniels' performance so far this season. Overall, Rudy and Randle lineups, you factor in Jaden McDaniels, they drop because obviously it includes that starting lineup. It drops to a minus 9.3, which I think speaks as much to how small the sample still is as it does to anything else, because there's no way Jaden is like single-handedly bringing the whole unit down this much. But there is something to teams not respecting Jaden McDaniels shooting 3-pointers and him not knocking down the open 3-pointers he's getting. And I kind of felt at the time that 40% from 3 a couple years ago was something of an outlier, but he can't be a 23% 3-point shooter. You can't play 2 non-shooters together. We saw what happened with Kyle Anderson and Rudy Gobert on the floor to this team offensively last year. And by the way, the overall offensive numbers, we'll get into some team stuff later, are good. Like cleaning the glass has the Wolves, I think, is the 13th best offensive rating wise. 13th, 12th right now in the league. Basketball Reference has them in the top 10, 9th. They don't take out garbage time like cleaning the glass does. So they're somewhere between 9th and 12th in terms of offensive rating. And this is despite McDaniels shooting 23% from 3 and being a clear net negative offensively. And it's a big indication of how good the bench is. So we'll get into that here in a minute. I want to talk specifically about the backcourt off the bench, DiVincenzo and Alexander-Walker, but we'll also talk a little bit of Naz. And then we'll get into some Anthony Edwards stuff here toward the end of the show. All that's upcoming here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by SKIMS. Guys, do you ever feel like you need a little boost in the bedroom? It's time you stop worrying about your performance and get SKIMS so you can feel confident all the time. know you can get ready and stay ready whenever you're in the mood. HIMS is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. HIMS provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, HIMS can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS, HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. HIMS.com/lockdown. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. All right, so we've talked about the Jaden problem. We've talked about Rudy and Randle. Let's talk about the Donte DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker lineups. And, here's the thing. Well, actually, let's do this. We'll talk about Donte and Na together, and then I'll also add in Naz Reid. We could talk about that lineup data again. Yes, 7 games in, but this is crazy. DiVincenzo and Alexander-Walker together, when they're any 5-man lineup that's got that pairing within that lineup, is a 99th percentile unit, a plus 23.5 in 251 possessions. That's a lot of possessions so far this season. And, the best version of that lineup has Naz in it. The most used version has Naz in it. The best lineup also has Naz in it. And actually, the majority of them do, of course, because it's the bench unit, right? Now, there's a lot of factors at play here, and this is something we'll monitor throughout the season, and we'll kind of see how this thing evolves. The first and most obvious one is they're playing against bench units that are inferior. I mean, the Wolves are going to have the best, very likely that they have the best 3 bench players in the entire NBA. Well, no, let me say it a different way. I don't want to say that the 1, 2, and 3 best bench players are all the Wolves. The best top 3 for a bench, and very likely the best top 8 in a rotation of anybody in the NBA. Seriously. Obviously, Naz won 6th man of the year last year. Donte DiVincenzo was 3rd in the entire NBA in 3-point makes and takes last season, and was, extremely improved player, high volume scorer, over 15 points a game with the Knicks last year. Nickeil Alexander-Walker rose to national prominence in the playoffs last year by shutting down Jamal Murray and among others, but is as good an 8th man as you're going to find. I mean, he's a starting caliber wing in this league. Whatever the modern day 3-and-D player is, that's what Nickeil Alexander-Walker is. And so DiVincenzo, Alexander-Walker lineups together are 95th percentile offensively. They're 94th percentile defensively. We've seen them kind of split point guard duties. And if you go through on cleaning the glass, they always assign point guard. If Ant's on the floor, he's the point guard. If he's not, it's DiVincenzo. So Alexander-Walker is never technically the point guard according to Cleaning the Glass. I think it's a little different if you look at Basketball Reference. But they've really kind of split up the duties of who's bringing the ball up the floor, who's initiating the offense. It's more often than not been DiVincenzo when they're on the floor together. Even if Conley or Ant's on the floor, a lot of times it is DiVincenzo that's at least bringing the ball across the timeline and starting the offensive set. But that's kind of been the backup point guard solution. And I wonder, in a world in which the Randle trade doesn't happen, which is a whole other conversation that maybe that's a big what if show we could do here down the line. Of course, a lot of things are different, but in that scenario, the world we were living in, 6-8 weeks ago, was Rob Dillingham was the 8th man. Rob Dillingham was the backup point guard. Donte DiVincenzo wasn't in the picture, and Dillingham and Alexander-Walker were going to split backup point guard duties. Now with DiVincenzo in the fold, I should say, he's not a point guard. He's a combo guard that could run the offense, which is basically what Nickeil Alexander-Walker is as well. And Dillingham hasn't played rotation minutes at all. If we add Naz in, so remember, again, Naz is in the most of these lineups anyway, but we're talking a plus 23.5 overall for that backcourt duo. You add Naz in, and they're a plus 28.3. So the lineups with DiVincenzo and Alexander-Walker without Naz are good, with basically almost entirely with Rudy and Randle in the front court. But with Naz, it's a 100th percentile group. In 216 possessions, they're a plus 28.3. They're 94th percentile on offense, but they're 97th percentile on defense. It goes to the ball pressure of DiVincenzo and Alexander-Walker. And you can look at the rest of the makeup of these lineups. So the most used lineup with DiVincenzo, Alexander-Walker, and Reid, it's with Ant and it's with Randle without Rudy on the floor. And that lineup's basically a plus 16. But the best lineup, both of the best lineups actually do have Rudy and not Randle on the floor, which again, those are the best defensive lineups. So the best two lineups with that trio, they're on the floor with Rudy Gobert. One of those is with Mike Conley, and one of those is with Anthony Edwards. So it'd be easy to argue that the Wolves' best lineup so far this year has been with Naz and Rudy in the front court, DiVincenzo and Alexander-Walker in the wings, and then either Conley or Ant, quote unquote, running point. Fascinating. And maybe not surprising, but fascinating and something to keep tracking. We knew that the bench was going to be good. We knew that the bench was going to be one of the best in the league, but we're already seeing this, very clearly laid out just how dominant they are over other teams' second units, but also fourth quarter crunch time type minutes. Not that the Wolves have been in that many crunch time situations this season. Obviously the Denver game comes to mind, but the majority of the Wolves games have been a handful of possessions where it's just kind of petered out toward the end. And there hasn't been a real, crunch time deal. And they won that Nuggets game, of course. And that was also Chris Finch, pulled the shoot on Jaden McDaniels. Was all right, we're going to go Alexander-Walker. DiVincenzo was playing, heavy fourth quarter minutes in those games and eventually gave way to Ant. Ant gets a little bit of a longer rest in the fourth because you trust DiVincenzo to do some of the same stuff. Obviously not anywhere near the scorer that Ant is, but he's capable of scoring at a level that, could be a six-man type burst alongside Naz Reid, who is literally the sixth man of the year. Okay. Let's transition to talking some team stuff. We'll get into Ant. I want to hit a team thing first here, and then we'll get to Ant. We're going to talk about Anthony Edwards' three-point rate, and that's something we're going to cover on today's Minnesota basketball party, which we'll be recording live on Wednesday morning, and then that'll be on the audio feed later. If you don't see it on YouTube early, it'll be on this audio feed later today. We're going to cover the Anthony Edwards shot selection and his, as I said earlier, proclivity to shoot three-point shots this season. But as a team, I want to start there. Remember, last year, the Timberwolves were kind of middle of the pack in terms of three-point rate. They're actually bottom third for a good chunk of the first part of the season, and then eventually kind of climbed into middle of the pack. They finished shooting top three in percentage. Cleaning the glass, I think, had them first. I think they were third on Basketball Reference. Again, if you take out heaves and garbage time stuff, that's kind of what impacted the difference there. But sitting here right now, 7 games in, the Timberwolves are third in three-point percentage once again, 39.8% as a team, and they're second in three-point rate. Nearly half of their shot attempts are coming from outside the arc, which if you told me 10 years ago that there'd be a Timberwolves team that was shooting half of their shots from three, I would have said you're crazy. And, we'll never get there as an organization. This Timberwolves organization will never be progressive enough to shoot enough threes. But here we are, second in the league in three-point rate, fifth in attempts per game because they don't play at a super fast pace, and third in percentage. And the craziest thing about this isn't necessarily the volume. It's the percentage and how they've gotten there. Because if you had said, 3 weeks ago, who are the best three-point shooters on the Wolves? Who are the three-point shooters that are going to lead? Who are the guys that are going to lead them in three-point shooting individually? Well, with no Karl-Anthony Towns, I would have said, Mike Conley and DiVincenzo, because Conley, has been one of the best three-point shooters in the league, full stop, the last 3-4 years. DiVincenzo was third in the league behind Steph Curry and Luka Doncic in both takes and makes from outside the arc last year, 40% plus. It'll be those two guys, Conley and DiVincenzo. Well, outside of Jaden McDaniels, they've been the very worst three-point shooters on the team. Seriously. Alexander-Walker shooting 50%. Naz Reid shooting 48.5%. Julius Randle shooting 46.5%. Ant is shooting 45% on crazy volume, which we'll talk about. And then there's an 11-point drop. Mike Conley is shooting 34% from three. Donte DiVincenzo is shooting 33% from three, and both on high volume. They're combining to shoot 12 threes per game, and they're only making 4 of them. They're shooting 33% combined. Conley and DiVincenzo on 12 attempts per game. That's going to come up. they're very likely both going to be in the neighborhood of 40%, give or take. Like maybe we're, somewhere in the 38 to 42% range. That's going to improve. Now, on the flip side, Naz isn't going to shoot 49%. Julius Randle's not going to shoot 46%, but their volumes will always remain lower than the volumes of Conley and DiVincenzo. So I expect this Timberwolves team 3-point percentage to stay in the top 5 all season and maybe be top 3 all season. I don't know that it'll be 40%. I don't think it will. But this is an encouraging thing that their 2 best shooters have been their 2 worst shooters, and they're still 3rd in the league in percentage and 2nd in 3-point rate as a team. It's crazy. All right, I want to close by talking about Anthony Edwards. And yes, we'll talk about shot selection and 3-point shooting when it comes to Ant. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is sponsored by Built Rewards. Okay, if you're a renter, no doubt you feel like at some point, if not now, you felt like you're stuck in a loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air. Well, it's time to turn the rent game around and start earning some serious rewards, and that's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch your Built points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation. You can put your points toward a flight, or maybe it's a hotel stay. There's 500 plus airlines and over 700,000 hotels and properties that you could do that with. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle, whatever makes the most sense for you. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. The Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built points have been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbuilt, joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Be sure to use our URL so they know that we sent you. Again, it's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA to start earning points with your rent payments today. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is also brought to us by our friends at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. They will curate your selection based on what you like the most to find any live event that you enjoy, whether, of course, sports, concerts, comedy, theater, all of the above are things you can find in Game Time. All of the above are things that I enjoy attending. You can also toggle on their all-in pricing feature to let you see your total up front so that there's no surprise fees at checkout, and you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy with their seat views. Also, their lowest price guarantee means that Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you think you find a better price somewhere else. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, let's close by talking a little bit of Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards, to this point in the season, his performance has been really weird. Like, this is another one of those. So I off the top today, I talked about how Jaden McDaniels, like the eye test and the numbers, neither one's good. That's obvious. Anthony Edwards is like such a weird case to this point in the season, because on the one hand, he's flamethrowing from three, and we're going to talk about that. He's also had a couple just completely dominant performances. He's also had some real duds, a couple of real duds of games, maybe a game and a half or so. And he's been miserable at the free throw line. And it all kind of comes out to roughly the same type of performance through 10% of the season as what we saw from him last year. He's playing more because they've only had the one blowout win. So he's playing 37 minutes a game. Across the board, his percentages or his counting stats look better. Like, let's just, it's not the best way to measure this, but I'm going to read this because a lot of folks are going to, will look just at the per game stuff. And I think it can also help us paint a picture here. Overall field goal percentage, Ant's up currently what would be a career high in field goal percentage, 46.8%. So nearly 47% for the field. He's 45% from three. Last year's 35.7%. His career best is basically 37% 2 years ago, his first All-Star season. And he's attempting almost twice as many threes per game as he did last year. We'll talk more about that. He's down a little 2-point percentage, but he's also shooting way less twos. That means his overall effective field goal percentage is nearly 60%. His previous career high is under 53%. Okay, that's important. His free throw percentage is down to 64%. His previous career worst was 75%, and last year he was almost 84%. Other counting stats, his rebounds per game are up slightly. His points per game are up to over 27 points per game. And turnovers are the same. Steals are down a little bit. Assists are down. We'll talk about that. Now, if you dig a layer further and you look at some of the peripheral stats, the rate-based stuff, which is what I think is the best way to kind of get a snapshot here, we know the three-point rate is way up. 57% of his shot attempts have been threes this year. Okay? The free throw rate is way down. As expected, it's still higher than what it was the first couple seasons of his career when he was shooting a lot of mid-range jumpers. He's getting more calls now. He's getting to the rim a little bit more frequently than he did early in his career, but obviously less than the last 2 seasons. Rebound rate is roughly the same. It's slightly down, but that doesn't concern me at this point. The one thing that's impacting some of the advanced stuff through 7 games for him is the assist rate is way down. It would actually be a career low, and the turnover rate is up over last year. One of the big things I talked about last season for Ant that made him jump from star to superstar, from star to All-NBA second team, was the assist rate went up and the usage rate went up, but the turnover rate went down. That's not what's happening so far this year. The assist rate has plummeted over 10 points, and the turnover rate is up nearly a half point, and the usage rate is down 1.5 points. Again, early, yes, but it starts to allow us to paint a picture of what he's doing, how he's going about his business so far this season, and that is shooting a lot more threes, getting to the rim less, shooting overall less mid-range shots. And yeah, the numbers back that up. The actual percentage of his attempts for mid-range is way down. It's like less than 20% of his shots are coming from 10 feet out to the three-point line, which is way down. It was like 23% last year. That's important. That's a good thing. But he's also getting to the rim a lot less. He got to the, 23% of his shots last year were within 3 feet. 2 years ago, it was nearly 30%. This year, it's 12%. And so the free throw rate is down. Now, the free throw rate or the free throw rate and the free throw attempts per game, those can go down a little bit if the threes stay where they're at and the percentages. He's not going to shoot 45% on the season, but if the percentage stays over 40 and the volume stays there, the free throw stuff can come down a little if it's coming at the expense of mid-range shots and we're shooting more threes. But it can't stay down where it is, and it can't be 64% if the three-pointers are going to come back to anywhere near where he's been for his career. And I am 100% open to real, true improvement with this three-point shot. We're nearing a sample size where we can say this is a legit possibility. He's going to be a north of 40% three-point shooter. But a jump of 5%, and currently it's almost 10%, would be pretty crazy. 10% would be insane. 5% would be pretty crazy. So we're not sure yet. We're 7 games in. He's 23. There's a real chance that he spent all summer working on his three-point shot and that he's going to be a 40% three-point shooter. Everyone's said that's a real thing that could happen in his career, and it might currently be happening. If that's the case, look out. Look out. If he's not going to shoot mid-range jumpers anymore, and that's just in his bag for end-of-clock situations, and I'll pull it out when I have to, when I need to, but I'm going to shoot 11 threes a game at 44, 45%, and I can dunk over you, get to the rim whenever I want. Like and I talked about this the post-game pod after the win the other day, that Ant used the 3 to set up the drive. And he hit that go-ahead shot late in the game to boost the Wolves the other night, to put them ahead, because he'd hit all those threes earlier in the game. And it's that much easier to put guys on skates if they have to come out and respect the three-point shot. Now, the next level here is if guys are closing out hard to Ant on the three-point line and he pump fakes and dribbles out of that shot, other teams are going to bring help. And he's got to find the lob to Rudy, which we've seen maybe once a game, which is good. It's progress. Or, cutting Naz coming out of the corner, spotting up three-point shooter, flinging it back to beyond the arc. He's got to make that next read quickly as the help comes. So we're not, and not a pass and crash situation. You don't want this to be a sloppy pass to try and force it to the opposite corner. But whatever that next read is, and this is film study, it's understanding what opposing teams are likely to do to you. And then it's also just reading and reacting. And Ant has the ability to do all of the above. That's the next frontier for him, is if he's pump faking out of these threes and not able to get to the rim because of the way the defense is playing him. Now, the C's may part. They may miss an assignment. He's going to dunk on a guy. He's going to get a three-point play. He's going to get to the line. Great. But if the defense rotates and if they wall up against him, he's got to make that next right read. All right. That's all we have for you today on the show. Listen later today to the Locked On Sports Minnesota basketball party with myself, Ron Johnson of the Ron Johnson Show, Jack Borman of the Locked On Wolves postcast, Sam Ekstrom, and also Reggie Wilson, the sports anchor at Care 11. That audio will be on this feed later today. If you want to watch it now, it's either live now or it will be on YouTube shortly on Locked On Sports Minnesota, so go check that out. Otherwise, I'll be back on Thursday. We'll preview the Bulls game Thursday night. We'll do the post-game pod Friday. It's a packed couple of days here on the Locked On Wolves feed. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you'd like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And you can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. A reminder of the daily newsletter. Locked On Wolves has the daily newsletter. It's a one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. Again, LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Wolves newsletter. The Locked On Wolves podcast is, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.